What is going on, my friends, and welcome back to another video on the channel. In today's video, we are going over Polygon Matic, as it may possibly be in a position to see losses of up to 45%. So for that reason, of course, we're going to be going over exactly what is going on and exactly how I'm going about it in order to maximize gains and minimize losses either way in which this thing goes. So with that being said, of course, let's go ahead and let's get straight into it. So first things first, let me just kind of talk about why we could be seeing such an extreme amount of losses before we even go into any of the indicators, because I know that is a pretty extreme number. Okay, so the reason why I am seeing the possibility of a 40 to 45% correction is due to our breakdown targets from the ascending wedge in which we were in. Now, what we can see is that as we did enter into this really strong run from realistically about June to December of last year, we were entering into what can be considered an ascending wedge. Now, the interesting thing about ascending wedges is more often than not, we will see them break to the downside. And what happens is that your major touches on the bottom side of your wedge then become the breakdown targets as you do see the loss of support. So what that means is as we do break to the downside, you can draw out your touch zones and the places where you touched it. Those become the points in which the price is most likely to see a fall down to. Now, as you can see, just about 3 or 4 days ago in the last video, we actually drew out this zone here. We drew a zone between 114 and 101. And what I told you guys is that if we lost this descending triangle here, and if we broke to the downside, be on the lookout for us to come down to 114 to 101. And as you can see, we came exactly down to that breakdown target before eventually seeing the bounce. So what this tells us is that that is now a confirmation that our breakdown targets are accurate and that we can then expect them to continue to be accurate going forward. Now, the problem with that is that as we did see this parabolic run for Matic, we didn't get any more breakdown targets between where we are now and between 60 cents. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean that we're going to fall to 60 cents? No, but it does mean that the door is open, okay? If at any given point we do see the price coming back down between 101, I am now under the belief that we could possibly see that correction all the way to our next breakdown target, which looks like the price going down about 42 to 43%, all the way down to 62 cents. Now, although this is a possibility, I want to talk about, what the indicators say, if they say that this is possible or if they say that this is likely, because just because something is possible doesn't mean it's likely. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's talk about it. Now, first and foremost, let's just look at our daily indicators to say, well, would this just be a strong crash towards 60 cents, or would it be a slow gradual fall there, or would we even be able to get there? Now, looking at our RSI, what is, a good sign is the fact that we already are extended down towards this 25 to 20 level on the daily RSI again. Now, generally speaking, as we can see, Matic doesn't usually go much further than this. Ever since, early last year, whenever it really started to pick up attraction, we never saw it go lower than this. Now, of course, precedent could be set. We could start to trek lower and lower towards the 10 level, but more often than not, we do see these strong bounces or we do see these strong accumulations before the eventual continuations to the downside. Now, my honest belief is that 60 cents is the absolute most that we would go down to before eventually starting to resort back up. I'm not under the belief that we would be able to fall any lower than 60 cents because our indicators just say that that is very likely where we would find an absolute bottom. Now, considering that fact, I would go ahead and say that it is likely that since we have so little room left here on the RSI, we would most likely start to see a strong case of bullish divergence forming in which this thing starts to trend up a little bit more. And we start to set these higher lows as these lower lows keep getting set. And that in the event in which we do go to 60, it would not be a strong capitulation. It would be more likely than not some type of slow gradual grind towards that point, and then maybe a minor capitulation before some type of growth towards the upside. Now remember, this is all based off of Bitcoin. For the most part, whatever Bitcoin does, the rest of the market will do. But as you can see, Bitcoin is in a similar position that it has its own breakdown targets that it is very likely going to revisit soon. So considering that fact, what I would go ahead and say is that based off the daily RSI, we are in a position to get that low, but I don't think it would be very fast. I don't think it would be very hard. I think it would be maybe something more of this nature before eventually seeing that strong capitulation towards the downside. Okay, now looking at the MACD, one thing we can see is we are in that position to do so as well. You can see that we were trying to converge here. We got a failed convergence, which is very bearish usually. From there, we usually do get rejected towards the downside, as we can see here. And as that does happen, that does open up the door for us to continue down to some of these lower levels in which we have visited before, which says that there very possibly could be a continuation towards the downside here. Now, looking at the weekly indicators, let's take a look at what's going on here. One thing we can see is that we are still trekking down towards, the 25 level here. But the issue is that we do still have room before we hit that oversold territory, And so for that reason, there definitely is still room for us to continue towards the downside. And I think that if we were to continue down, we very likely would end up in a very overextended position towards the downside, which does back up the thought that we very likely would see a bounce, a very strong bounce on this level if the price is able to get that low. And last but not least, we can see that our weekly MACD is in a position where it also did start to make progress. But once we see failure in that progress and a continuation, it does usually go a little bit lower, and a little bit further down than where it initially went down to, okay? So, for all of those reasons, looking at those indicators, just the daily and the weekly RSI and MACD, what we can kind of concur is that we are in a position that we can fall that low, okay, to be honest. Matic is in a position where it may revisit down to 62 cents. But personally speaking, I think if in the worst case scenario it does, I think the worst case scenario is that it goes at 62 cents, that would be the bottom. And I do not see us going any lower than that point. One of the main reasons being is the massive amount of bullish divergence in which we are still seeing on the weekly RSI here, in which, and while we're above 62 cents, we are still setting a higher low at any given point that we bounce. And you look here, we are already setting a much lower low on the RSI, which kind of says that any strong bounce from one of these levels could very possibly send the price extremely high. And so for all those reasons, I still think that we are in a position to see a strong bounce and a continuation towards the upside here. And that although this is a possibility, I still don't think it is very likely, okay? I don't think it's likely we fall down to 62 cents because I don't see the rest of the market crashing another 30, 20, 40%. I just don't personally see that happening, but that is just my personal opinion. And so for that reason, what I would go ahead and say at this point is that for those of you who are buying, my honest opinion on that is that I am slowing down pretty much completely, right? I did a little bit of accumulation as we did hit these key levels, as Bitcoin itself did come down to its own breakdown target, as you can see here. Let's kind of zoom in. As Bitcoin did get to its very first breakdown target here, I actually did a strong accumulation over in my dollar cost average portfolio. I went in on some Ethereum, some Bitcoin, Solana. Of course, all of this is available to our Patreon members. I went in on all of that, but personally speaking, if we are going to continue to lose these levels of support, I'm just not going to do any more accumulating until we find some more structure and we can figure out the next the next game plan there. Okay, so looking at Matic specifically, I would say if we lose $1.01, do be on the lookout for the price to probably start to continue pretty hard towards the downside. There are some breakdown targets, we do have some support here at 93 cents and a little bit of support at 75 cents in between this level here. So each one of those could push us back up against, and back above 101. But realistically, until we're capable of doing so, I would definitely say it's time to slow down and start to be aware that a fall of 43% is a possibility. Again, not too likely just yet, but it is something that is knocking on our door and we need to be very aware of it and very cautious of it. So that's all I wanted to do today. Is I just wanted to let you guys know about the absolute worst case scenario of where this thing could be going now that we are possibly losing this key level of support, and that unless we're capable of bouncing at this point back up to, maybe $1.25, a fall down to some of these lower levels is getting more and more likely, especially if we lose $1.01. So with that said, that's going to be about it. I know this was much of a Debbie Downer video, but I'm always just going to give you guys my honest opinion, and I know you do appreciate it. Now, before we do go ahead and wrap everything up, kind of just to add a little bit of excitement to the video, that was again, like I said, that was much of a Debbie Downer video. I do want to let you guys know that the last time, and we did talk about Matic, I let you guys know about something called Fame MMA. It was a token that was launching that I was very excited about. I told you while the rest of the market is falling, I have been taking part in pre-sales and all these things to kind of hedge against my losses. And something that I was doing was just getting in on as many pre-sales as I possibly could, one of them being Fame MMA. Now, Fame MMA launched at a price of 1 cent, and it's currently up to 40 cents, and they are not even listed on PancakeSwap yet. They're going to be launching on PancakeSwap in 3 to 4 days, coming May 5th and May 6th. And so for that reason, I'm very excited to say that I still think there could be a lot of volume coming in, and it is something that could possibly have even more room to grow in the near future. Now, of course, you never really know what's going to happen with these events. If there's a buy the rumor, sell the news etc. And it's still very new, so be very careful. But I am happy to say that anyone who got in on the pre-sale is now up about 40x. And so for that reason, of course, it's definitely something that you should still check out in my opinion. Just check out the links in the description, go do your due diligence, and let me know what you think. But with that said, that's going to be about it for today's video. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I will see you all next time. Peace.